people always say, what's the best thing, right? Meditation, breath work, yoga, whatever is out there, finding something that works for you. And, there was a year where I meditated an hour a day every single day, and that was beneficial for that time. And there's also, this is just the way that I've done it. I get inspired to do something and then I move toward that practice. So now I bring the awareness into the weight training, but I love martial arts too, which is the middle way. How do you stay centered? And so when I was in China training with the Shaolin monks, we would have qigong in the morning, which is like soft meditative energy work type of deal. And then I would be punching and kicking solid trees with my freaking hands, which is completely
Talk about
absurd.
yin and yang.
Yeah, right. So you have both sides. So whatever inspires you, and then you'll notice what those skills. It's a skill of attention. So you could have a meditation where you're doing the dishes, right? In Zen, they'll just talk about how they give the same reverence to sweeping the floor as they do to meditation, right? And so even my Native American friends, they don't meditate. They're like, why would you meditate when the sun is rising? Look at the sun. You know what I mean? Like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Just, right? It's like, why are your eyes closed?
Yeah.
Just like, and it's funny, but it's about the practice of attention.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Far Out with Faust. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Matt Belair. If you've not heard of this cat, you're about to hear all about him. Let me tell you, Matt is and has always been a student and a teacher of human potential. He's dedicated himself to uncovering and exploring the limits of human capacity and consciousness. This guy spent time in Nepal studying meditation with Buddhist monks. He survived a near-death experience while trekking Everest. He's an accomplished athlete. He's a sought-after high-performance coach, mixed martial artist. But perhaps today he's most known for his podcast, Mastermind, Body, and Spirit. This podcast has reached #1 in iTunes in over 10 countries and has over 100 million minutes listened to. It's an epic library of 550 episodes. So after you hear this podcast, go over to Matt's podcast and subscribe, because you'll be thanking yourself. It's a gift that keeps on giving. Matt, it's an honor to have you on the show, bro. Thanks for being in.
Oh man, well, I appreciate the intro and the invite, and you're doing a great job on your podcast too. So just thanks for having me.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate that. Dude, where to begin with you? I was, trying to get through, even a small percentage of the incredible work that you've done with your podcast. And like, I just going through it, I'm like, man, hearing you talk, first of all, you're a phenomenal listener, but hearing you talk is even more exciting to me, because you've just come into such an accumulation of wisdom and knowledge. Between your experiences and then all the incredible people you've had on your show. So, first we got to get into give everyone, when did you get bit by this incredible, you have such a passion for experience and seeking it out, you didn't just learn to meditate. You went to Nepal and learned with the monks. You know what I mean? You didn't just train martial arts. You went and you saw the Shaolin monks, and I think you were in Thailand also studying with the Muay Thai fighters, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when did you get this, when did it become a dominant thing for you to have to go out and experience, the best of it?
Yeah, man. Well, I think for me, as young as I could remember, I grew up enjoying martial arts as a kid. My dad was a martial artist and was just fascinated by it. And I wanted to do all the things that I saw in the movies and break bricks and do all this kind of stuff. And, I got a little bit older and I got into sports. I played hockey and I started skateboarding and snowboarding. And what I learned from martial arts applied to the other sports. But I was always interested in human potential. Like if Jesus Christ were here, I'd go find him. If Bruce Lee were here, I'd want to go train with him. Why not train with the best? And so I started studying, consciousness, human potential, lucid dreaming, breathing, altered states, all that in high school. And I was just really curious about the limits of human potential and also spirituality and enlightenment and those kinds of ideas. And so I ended up snowboarding after college for 7 years and became an international snowboard coach, and really just enjoyed a life of snowboarding and fun and probably a bit too much partying, but always still studying things around like neurolinguistic programming, sports performance, sports psychology, consciousness research, and those ideas. And then I knew forever that I wanted to travel. I always wanted to train with the Shaolin monks. I wanted to become enlightened, right? It's like, okay, if I'm going to become enlightened, who exists that would be the closest thing to enlightened beings? I figured, Tibetan monks. So I wanted to go to Tibet, but it's still occupied by China. So I ended up having to go to Nepal. And I just, I feel like there's a huge value of being around the best, right? I want to go there and immerse myself in that training, see what their potential is, how real it is, especially when you get into the mystical stuff, because even within martial arts, you've got trickery, right? You've got people who have these tricks for breaking boards or stone, right? You got fake boards, fake stone, sometimes ice, you can put a little thing in there, and then they're deceiving people.
Yeah.
I call that kind of like black magic, right? It's like you're saying it's one thing, but it's not. I mean, doing a magic trick, but I'm telling you it's real. And so I think that there's definitely harm in misleading people. And so when I was with the Shaolin monks, right, I wanted to see, like, are you guys actually breaking stone? Like, are you guys actually doing this? And they are. And, before that, I trained with, I've always liked martial arts, and I like it to be practical too. So I went to Phuket top team so I could train at MMA and just get better. I'm not the best. If I competed, I get my ass kicked. But if I dedicated maybe from this point 2 years, I could be competitive. Right. But it's a whole new world. When I started, right. This was like UFC.
It's evolved.
4 and 5. So I just go in there with wrestling. So it's evolved now where everybody has all those skills and they're just killers. And you need to dedicate to one line, right? You got to master that one skill. And so I've become very proficient in many things. I'm not the best snowboarder in the world, but I'm better than 90% of people. I'm not the best martial artist in the world, but I'm better than most people. I'm not the strongest person in the world, but I'm stronger than most people. I like variety. I just like all the things I enjoy, and I use what I learn from high performance sports psychology and martial arts essentially and apply it to every other sport that I enjoy. And so, from a very young age, I wanted to explore the planet. I wanted to be around, the masters of the world and see how they accomplish what they do and how they train and what is it they do? Why are they different? Why are they able to accomplish these things where the regular person is not able to, and learn how to take those tools and tactics and strategies, apply them to my life, and then also, share those with other people who are interested. So I think that's the shortest way I can put it. Probably could put it longer if I wanted.
It was well summed up, and so all that experience has allowed Matt to really help not only himself, but he works with a lot of people as a coach, and that the amazing thing about gathering that kind of experience is you really start to not only learn about yourself in a way that most people don't, but you can then bring that to each and every experience. And I always tell people, like the most incredible breakthroughs happen when someone who has, all this knowledge and experience about these different things finds this other thing and then connects the dots in a way that no one ever has before. It's always incredible to me to look at some of the biggest breakthroughs and all the things that happen that are absolutely memorable and changed the way people think about things come from people like yourself, who are connecting the dots in a way that really very few people do. So I love that about you. And I have a lot of things in common with you as far as traveling and, seeking new experiences and things of that nature. So, I heard you talking about, first of all, you went to Egypt with Nassim Haramein, who, it's really difficult to even get a hold of him, let alone get him on a podcast. And so you went in 2017, you traveled with him. And I think you were doing a course, but dude, you had this incredible experience visiting. What's the name of the big pyramid, the big room in there?
The Giza one?
Well, dude, you had, like, I want to know about this thing that Nassim put on your head, man. Like, what Like that is just, this is the craziest cool story I heard in so long. Like that. So you went to Egypt with the man, the myth, the legend, Nassim. Like, take it from there. What happened?
Yeah, so well, that was a very fascinating trip, and you know, Egypt is fascinating in itself, and I've been to Angkor Wat, which is also fascinating. So, I was in Sedona at the time at a friend's house, and Nassim came to speak, and he said he was going to go to Egypt, and I immediately knew I had to go. And so we ended up going to Egypt with the Resident Science Foundation, and there were mathematicians, geologists, you know, scientists, every walk of life there. Exploring. So we did this amazing trip, and they had created something called the Arc Crystal at this time, which is supposed to put out a resonance. So they did like testing on it with water and different things, and showed how, you know, this crystal could help the water grow. And I can't verify any of this. I did look at the tests, and so I'm like, okay, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I understand it all, right? Like, to a degree, not
Yeah. Well,
I'm
yeah.
able to understand it to agree, but not confirm it to the level of like doing my own testing. Because now, as I get older, it's like so rigorous, right? I can say this is what I saw, this is what I observed,
Yeah.
this is what I felt. But I understood the concept. The concept was that this crystal puts out a resonance, and they do have studies to show that and prove that. But it only puts out a small energetic signature, and it's this brace or this necklace that you can buy that exists now.
Hmm.
If you go to artcrystal.com, you can go see them. And so
Cool.
everybody there got them. Now, going into the three pyramids, you historically, what I was told is that you're not allowed to go to all three in one night. You're allowed to go in one for whatever reason. So
Hmm.
we end up being able to go to all three in one night, plus these crystals. But what they had done is that you're not allowed to take anything in there. You know, you can't take your cameras, even though there's
Right.
cameras on your phone and people sneak stuff in, but you can't take any objects in. So what they had done is these crystals are able to come out of the necklace. So they
Mm.
build, so one has a little tiny energetic signature, but the more you put on there, the bigger the energy signature.
Right.
So they put 64 in the king's chamber, in the sarcophagus, right?
Wow.
So we're all up there, and Nassim is there doing these ohms, and the whole group is oming. So it's kind of like, you know, yeah,
Mind blowing. It sounds mind blowing.
mystical, esoteric out of, you know, a Stanley Kubrick film. It's like the whole thing. I'm like, oh my God. You know, I remember at one point going in, and it's so small, and I was like, man, I was like, they're so awe-inspiring, you know,
Yeah.
like you see the images, but when you're walking in like to the door and you start going up to the king's chamber, and you're just like, what the fuck
Yeah.
is this?
What is going on? Yeah.
What is going on? So I'm like, is this how I like die and go to like the other side? Or like, what's gonna, if I won't be surprised if I get portaled out of here. Like, it would make perfect sense. And as they were doing the lectures leading up to it, they kept talking about the pyramids as this initiation device. Like, there's some sort of
Mm.
initiation if you go in there, you get initiated, or whatever the case is. So they kept up with that story, and we'll talk about, you know, some of the Egyptian stories that
Hmm.
coincided with that idea. And so anyway, finally gets to my turn. You lie down in the sarcophagus. You got the 64 behind you. Then they
Wow.
put one on your third eye with about 25, 30 people, something like that, oming and doing
Oh
this
my
thing in the
God.
room. And like my body is just like vibrating like crazy. And so it's just a really intense experience. And a lot of people, you know, shared stories of
Hmm.
having quite mystical experiences, which I didn't have because of, you know, I've done DMT and meditation and have had mystical ones. You know,
Yeah.
I had a good strong vibration, but nothing too nuts. But
Right. It wasn't that you weren't like, yeah,
I didn't get
I totally
catapulted to
understand.
another dimension, which I would have been super fun.
Yes. I
So that
understand completely.
yeah. So we did that, but then we went to the two other pyramids, and I guess there's like the first time they allowed a group to do that, and each time we had those the tetrahedron with us, and it was on a full moon, and it was just a really interesting evening, and I ended up having a pretty profound experience after that with Thoth, which apparently the Egyptians told me, or the guides anyway, told me that the proper pronunciation is Tahat, T-H-O.
Tahat. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm glad you
Tahat. And I
said
never
that.
heard that as a Thoth or Thoth, but he would say Tahat. So I had a very profound experience shortly after that. So I don't know what that means exactly. I just know that I experienced it, and it
Yeah.
was quite fascinating. And all it did was just, nobody knows how these things are built. There's so many mysteries.
Yeah.
It's all conjecture and theory, because
Yeah.
we can't build it now, and a lot of stuff doesn't make any sense. The precision and the manufacturing, we don't have that now. You know,
Right.
we don't know where it is. It's something beyond what exists right now.
Let alone the way the its placement on the planet and how it corresponds. The placement could have only, in my opinion, been done by a civilization that understood astronomy, and had let's just say an aerial view of where they wanted to put it, which doesn't jive with the kind of the history that we're taught. But I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm wondering, it reminds me of, have you ever read Drunvalo Melchizedek's Flower of Life? Or wait, The Ancient Secret of the Flower. What's the name of his book?
Yeah, I know the one you're speaking of. I've browsed through it and I've listened to a lot of his lectures, and that was
Yeah.
one of my Sedona time, but I haven't read that book front to back.
So he has an experience where this is crazy. He went to the pyramids. Well, and I can't remember, it was before he had these guides, these spirit guides, he calls them angels, who were with him for like 11 years. He could just hear their voice and they would tell him where to go. But he had this activation, I think also in I want to say the King's Chamber. Like they let him in there. He had this crazy experience, but that led to this intense and this is crazy because it lines up with, I know I've heard your story of Thoth, or how do they pronounce it?
Tahat.
Of Tahat. And it's so, dude, the parallels are crazy. So Drunvalo was meditating, and all of a sudden, Tahat appeared in front of him and had him by his hands, like as if he was sitting Indian style cross. And they had this intense exchange for hours, where he was, and he, like, the explanation he got was that he was not on this world for the longest time, but he was told to exchange information with Drunvalo, and all this like really detailed conversation came of it. But the way that he was holding hands with Drunvalo and the way that he came through reminded me of the story that you told of how like the first time you had this connection with him at the festival that you were at, and you were kind of just you were meditating, holding that young lady's hands, and you had this crazy experience, right? I mean, it's a weird parallel, the way those two things line up, because you didn't even know about it, right?
No, I didn't know about her, and I didn't. It's interesting that in his story, it was the same setup with holding hands with someone.
Yeah.
So that's very fascinating.
Crazy. I was like, holy shit. I wonder if Matt has ever heard of that story, but yeah. Because then I see you probably had like an activation happen in Egypt, and then when you were at this festival, this crazy experience came upon you. But that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, because everybody wants, I mean, people who are kind of on this path, they want they're chasing the mystical, you know what I mean? They're like a bloodhound. And of course I'm like, as if I don't, and I'm not all for that. But I love when, you talked about how you have to put yourself in a position to be present when the mystical arrives. And that comes from practice. That comes from working on yourself to the degree that you can actually have an interaction if it does happen for you, And I think that's the biggest thing, that people want the interaction so they can dedicate themselves to themselves. They're kind of like, they want the cookie, but they haven't done anything for it. And I heard you talking about it on a podcast, and you were like, I meditate every day. Like I didn't just like go to a festival, drop acid, and have an interaction with this being. I'm always working on myself, and I'm just like, I wonder what your spirit, what your daily practice is these days, and how you continue to cultivate that.
Well, you shared a lot of things I think are important there. I equate it to like a big wave rider. Like if you're a surfer, if you have an opportunity and you go to the biggest waves in the world, and one comes, and you try to get on that thing, you're going to get absolutely wrecked. It is going to demolish you. And so you gotta work up to that experience, and people kind of see it as like what I can get. It's like, oh, I'm going to go get this spiritual experience, and it's not coming from an honest place. And I feel like that's why so many people don't have them, because once you have one or two, you realize that these winks are glimpses where the entire point of this existence is to be alive, and that's the miracle. It's every single everyday life, and learning to master yourself to the point where the mundane is mystical. Life is mystical. It's beautiful. It's profound. It's enough. You've got all the vastness in the container. We're trying to escape life because it's challenging and it's hard and it has all these other things. But I think the mastery comes in that simplicity, kind of like the Zen example of chop wood, carry water, right? Before wood, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But I can say that they're beautiful reminders of where we come from and the great spirit, God, creator, whatever that word is for you, knowing the power and that feeling, because it goes far beyond words. It's unspeakable and it's really beautiful and it's really humbling. But all it does is remind you that to continue walking an honest path, if you're doing it, it's like all will find. I think there's a quote along the lines like, all will find God who are honestly seeking, right? But if you're seeking it for selfish means, when you get that mystical experience, you're going to get your ass handed to you because the mystical and God knows that you're seeking it so you can be the enlightened one. So you're running the workshop.
That's
so you
ego,
can do
yeah.
the shaman paint. Yeah. And spiritual ego and the new agey stuff is rampant with that. I remember getting into the festival scene and being very excited about all this kind of new fun stuff. And I realized pretty quick, like it was very disheartening in a lot of ways too, because there's a spiritual ego to things. And for me, it was my martial arts practice that allowed me to have that groundedness because, you have to do, the inner and the outer, right? It needs to be practiced. If you just do one or the other, you're not really sound. So for my daily practice, for years, I just did like a meditation. 1 year I meditate, I try everything. So whatever is out there, I try the cold training. And when people say, oh, cold training will give you this, mystical thing, I'm going to go do that. Right. So there's not an experience out there that I haven't done. So I know what it does and how effective it is and the truth behind it. And what I've learned of doing almost, pretty much everything that exists out there, and I'm sure there's lots I haven't tried, is that you can, if you have done nothing, anything will get you started.
Right.
If you've never tried meditation, that's hard. Cold training's great. If you've never done anything and you try breath work, that's going to be the savior for you because you've done nothing and now you're doing something. Right. So that's good. And it's good to go do those things. For me right now, it's just been keeping my body healthy. Normally in the winters, I go snowboarding and that's where I very much enjoy it. But I usually have a constant journaling practice. And right now it's just going to the gym and staying fit. And then after I meditate and I pray, very, very simple. There was a time in my life for years where my morning routine was 2 bloody hours, but I had my time to do that. And as a single person, and now I'm a father and I have a family, and I've been really trying to own the idea that life is my teacher, that if I want to learn anything or be engaged or meditate is to bring in presence with everything. And then, my personal practice right now is usually through some sort of sport, which would be martial arts, which would be skateboarding, snowboarding. And so I feel like people can do that through art and creativity and painting and music, and whatever that means is to get very, very present, very, very connected. And so I do pray is very, very important for me. Journaling, and some sort of sport or physical activity. And recently it's just been, I want to get as strong as I can. I don't know why. I'm just motivated to do that. And I just do it.
Very cool, man. No, I love, I'm being a father myself and, maintaining a family and getting the kids where they need to be on schedule and keeping, your wife happy. And so you learn to use your time and that, right now I'm in a pretty similar boat. If I'm trying to build my strength and stamina, I'm doing a lot of sparring at the boxing gym, and I got this thing coming up. And like for me, it's just about overcoming my nervous system and mastering my body. Because I've been training boxing training for half a dozen years, but when you get in against somebody, now things are operating differently. The body wants to go into this fight or flight. The biology wants to take over, and I'm all about mastering that, and coming back into self and not letting the body be the master. So that's kind of the way I challenge myself, and just kind of training and conditioning helps with all that, because it's really hard to be the master of your body if you're getting beat up on and you're exhausted, So to be in shape and to be strong, it helps in this mission. But no, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm very similar. I have I have a strong taste for diversity and different things, and I always got something that I'm doing and planning. So it's very cool to hear you share your daily practice. And I think what you said is right on. Absolutely. People can hear that and really run with it. And I see people who do that, who take that step and who just put something in their life. Man, I started with 10 minutes and now I'm 2 months in and I just feel differently. And I'm like, imagine if you get to 20 minutes, like you will exponentially continue to change your presence, your body chemistry, your brainwave function. It's all going to adapt to the more time you give it. So you're right. It's great advice too.
Yeah, and it's finding, people always say, what's the best thing, right? Meditation, breath work, yoga, whatever is out there, finding something that works for you. And, there was a year where I meditated an hour a day every single day, and that was beneficial for that time. And there's also, this is just the way that I've done it. I get inspired to do something and then I move toward that practice. So now I bring the awareness into the weight training, but I love martial arts too, which is the middle way. How do you stay centered? And so when I was in China training with the Shaolin monks, we would have qigong in the morning, which is like soft meditative energy work type of deal. And then I would be punching and kicking solid trees with my freaking hands, which is completely
Talk about
absurd.
yin and yang. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So you have both sides. So whatever inspires you, and then you'll notice what those skills, it's a skill of attention. So you could have a meditation where you're doing the dishes, right? In Zen, they'll just talk about how they give the same reverence to sweeping the floor as they do to meditation. Right. And so even my Native American friends, they don't meditate. They're like, why would you meditate when the sun is rising? Look at the sun. You know what I mean? Like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Right? It's like, why are your eyes closed? Just like, and it's funny, but it's about the practice of attention. So, and even Alan Watts, I think, calls it the absurd practice. So I think it is very beneficial. But once you kind of understand it, it's the ability to quiet your mind. Right. You want to have that introspection, and some people get it through various means. And I think meditation is a phenomenal way to do that. So as a practice, so usually when I'm done, actually, I go into the steam room and it's about a 15-minute meditation where I just sit there, and you can meditate anytime, anywhere with a little quiet space, but you're letting, it's like meditation is listening to God and praying is talking. Right. So you need, and then you can also get it in the car ride home. You know what I mean? There's all types, just being present and not just noticing the inner dialogue spinning and spinning and spinning. So the better you're at noticing that and coming back to presence, you're bringing that awareness and that training into everything. And so you're able to receive a little bit better. You're able to relax the body a little bit more, and you begin to integrate the practice, and you'll notice, if you need to do a little bit more training somewhere else once you get off kilter.
Right. Yeah, I liken it to, it's when you get really good at something, you kind of it becomes more subconscious, like learning to drive. People, when you first learn to drive, you're kind of like, you're hyper aware of what's happening. You're very conscious of everything that's going on. Sometimes you're a little too subconscious. Your palms are sweaty, your armpits are sweaty. You're like, I hope I don't mess this up. I'm about to take my driver's test, whatever, what I mean? But the point is, you become very conscious. And then when you get good at it, you just get in the car and you forgot you put your drink on top of the car. You're just backing up and spilling soda all over the car. And it's like, dude, come back into it.
Making a TikTok video and a sandwich at the same time.
Exactly. And so there's challenges to it, because the better you get at being conscious, the more you bring it into different facets of your life. I was Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm a student of Dr. Joe's. It's been about 7 years since he's kind of the one who taught me to meditate. God bless him. Because my monkey mind was completely out of control, and I was dealing with a lot of issues. Of course, they're all mine. But he does this awesome. He's like, you got to be able to do it with your eyes open. I mean, if you're going to go from meditation and get in your car and start raging in traffic, then we've accomplished nothing. He was like, I want you in that state with your eyes open. So we would practice getting into that state, and he would set up these challenges. Like, he was like, this is what the ancient schools of mystery in Egypt used to do. They would have initiations, and it was about overcoming fear. And one time, we were in Toronto. We were in a 43-story building. He's like, and I thought they were joking. I was positive. I was at this retreat that people were joking. They're like, we're gonna go over the side of the building. We're gonna rappel down the building. I was like, get the fuck out of here. I was like, there's like a bunch of 80-year-olds here. How the hell are they gonna do it? He was like, people are like, if they want to do it, they can do it. So this is the first day there, and I'm walking. I think it was, I forget the name of the hotel, but it was right in downtown Toronto. And I'm walking across this bridge that goes over the road, and everyone is looking up at the side of the building. I'm like, what the hell is everyone looking at? And sure enough, there are people coming down, rappelling down the side of the building, like 43 stories. And I'm like, he was serious about that. So, we get into a state, and then we get really heart centered, and then just step over, they hook you up and you step over the ledge and you go down the side of the building. But it's to do it with your eyes open, to understand that everything becomes a meditation. The more present you become is absolutely, a lifelong lesson and challenge. So I hear you, man. To get present, even when you're driving, because it's easy to be unconscious, to just kind of let let someone else have the wheels.
Yeah,
But,
unconscious and entertained. I
oh
looked
my
up
God.
the definition of entertainment the other day because I was curious because when I hosted a law summit, I had about 35 experts on from around the world speaking about law, and what I realized is that the Black's Law dictionary and what happens in courts, they have their own separate language, their own separate definitions, and the definitions of the English language, most people have never looked up the words they're using. You get so much more understanding when you do that. And so when I looked up entertainment, it's to hold one's mind, which makes
Wow.
sense. And you look at all of these, television shows and hockey and all these different things that they're holding your mind. So that
Mm-hmm.
means you're in stoicism, what you'd be in dead time, right? So you're occupied, you're getting your mind filled by an outside source. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just to be aware of who is in your mind, who's controlling your mind. And in Buddhism, they'll call it mental nutriments, right? What's coming in, who is speaking to you. So what influences are around you. And that's why I feel like environment that were so important. And that's why when I did my training and travels, I wanted to immerse myself in those environments because I knew they were the best for me. I wanted to be the best snowboarder I could be. So I went to Whistler, Canada, which is the best opportunity I
Mm-hmm.
had to be around that type of culture. So I think there's huge value in that and just understanding what you're filling your mind with and what kind of environment you're in, because it changes and people change all the time. When you are an alcoholic and you stop drinking, you stop hanging around those groups of
Right.
friends 90% of the time because you're doing different things. You might get some gym buddies, right?
Right.
You start to do different things, you have different influences, you have different thoughts, and you have different practices and different habits. So ultimately you become a new person.
That's right. Literally, you become a new person. It's funny you mentioned that about community law. I was listening to your podcast with Peter Stone. The next evolution of humanity is peace, I think he said, and I love that. But I think the podcast is called like sovereignty, Vatican, and the keys to freedom.
Yeah, that
And he
sounds about right.
talks a lot. Yeah, I don't know
You're
how
giving
long
him
ago.
my quote though.
Oh, is that's
Well,
your quote?
I had heard that from one of my Native American
Oh,
teachers. They
that's
said that
right. I'm
the
sorry.
next evolution for humanity is peace. Yeah,
I
which I
love
thought was
that.
beautiful. So it's not even mine.
What is anyone's, but no, it's a
Exactly.
beaut. I did hear it. I kind of heard it on the podcast and I couldn't
Well, I'm
remember.
glad you remember. That's the important part because I think it's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Yeah, man. But that brings up a great point that, when you are present and you're cultivating this practice, then you can really start to look at things and analyze things. And we have a very big shortage of this capacity in society right now. Everyone is just kind of herded and doing what they're told, and if they don't, then something happens to scare the Jesus out of them, so they will. And it's like, no, take the time to slow down and think about what's happening. Think about what's going on in your environment. And the guy you had on talked a lot about how the corporations have become the dictates that we just take for granted. We don't question anymore. And where do these things come from? Everything is very tricky these days, and like this corporate facade that really kind of takes away your right, or tries to. So it was a very interesting podcast you had with him. I don't know if you remember. It's probably a while ago, dude. You've had so
Oh
many
yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah, no, well, with the law stuff, I definitely remember because I had him on the law summit and I had him on my show as well. And the topic of law is incredibly fascinating. So I would recommend that everybody in the world learn it. It is not at all what they make you think it is, like getting your bar. It's a very spiritual process. If you want a good handle to get started, check out the Choose Freedom Law Summit, where I interview a lot of experts. And
Cool.
especially in the United States of America, your system is the best on the planet. We are still trying to figure out what works in the United States does not work the same in Canada. You
Mm,
can hold people accountable, you can sue them, you can stand on your rights. So basically, what I learned is that, among other things, there's no law but God's law. So you cannot infringe on another person's free will. That's law. But
yeah.
everything else, every single other thing, a speeding ticket, land taxes, every tax, running a red light, everything. If you're not harming another person, right? It's just
Yeah.
an act or a statute that gets tagged to your person, your straw man. Now, I know in detail how this exists. So your birth certificate, they create a fictional character like a corporation. So when I
Hmm.
go into court, they say Matthew Belair. They're not talking about me, the man. They're talking about the all caps name corporation they created at birth. And all capitals is sign language. And so you have all these details of how they create
Yeah.
this massive deception. But just because you know that, within Canada, they still can railroad you, and you need to it's like a master of chess.
Yeah.
So they're still making you consent, and that's what all these people basically were saying. It's all contractual, right? You
Yeah.
have to consent, and even with the vaccine, all that stuff, it's still consent based, but they use coercion, and now they're going way too far.
Yeah.
They're pushing the bounds because I think it's unraveling, and people are getting wise to the system that we knew before. And
Yeah.
so, especially in the United States, but literally everywhere, I don't think it's a bad idea, because it's a spiritual pursuit. It's something that I was like, wow, I had no idea. And just to kind of get your understanding of your rights and what's going on, because what it comes down to is that you are a free person under God.
Yes.
Nobody. So one person out on there, Alphonse Fagiolo, would say, I can't tell you what you can or can't do. Otherwise, you'd be my property.
Right.
And so if you're no one's property, but then you need to know how to stand on it, because they will
Yeah. They'll run.
try to
Yeah.
enforce you. But within the United States, the people who know, you could just watch, because they'll call up and like, do not mess with that, because immediately they'll get the repercussion. You're able to enforce it with such a
Hmm.
greater capacity there. It still exists in Canada, but they are just so corrupt, and it's so challenging, and it just doesn't work the same way. Not to not pursue it in another country, because you still can have some success. And I feel like everybody needs to know this basic knowledge so we can uncover it. It's just more of a challenge that we're still sifting through.
Right. Right.
The
Well,
whole system is Luciferian. It's a satanic system, because what they're trying to do is deceive you to take your shit.
right.
That's the whole
Get
point,
you to
right?
agree. Basically,
Get you
get
to
you.
agree to take
Yeah.
something, of yours, like the land in Canada, we're taxed like crazy. Then there's land tax, and we didn't agree to this,
No.
right? So even though there are options, because if you get an income, you have to pay that. But if you get compensation, I come over and mow your lawn for $10.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. So there's a difference between income and compensation. Black's Law Dictionary and the regular
Right.
dictionary. So when you go into court, you think you're speaking English. You're not. You're in their jurisdiction, and that's why. So it's so deceptive. It's
Yeah.
so incredibly deceptive. It's nuts, but it does leave you empowered when you know that. And I feel like we all need that understanding, because then we can
Hmm.
hold these people accountable, and then, reestablish these laws and this education, so nobody infringes upon your rights. And how, oh, that doesn't affect me. Like one example, in Canada, I never wore a mask this whole time, because I knew that it was a bylaw and there's exemptions, and they can't ask me. Just because I
Right.
knew that, I didn't wear one. So that
Right.
knowledge allowed me the freedom and peace of mind to do as I wished.
Yeah.
And even if they try to give me a ticket, I would know that it's not valid.
Right. No, in the end, it's an illusion, dude. Like, it's like there was, I don't know how many months into it, but finally it came out that, that Cuomo, God, who was in charge of New York at the time, never had the authority to do what he did. And in fact, it was always operating under illusion, because it was never put into any true law. And over and ad nauseum, this is repeated. I mean, you had freaking Biden, not that he knows even what he's reading anymore, but he said something, everybody jumped to it. All the when they put the V mandate down about that, and they said, even if you have 100 people or less, you're exempt, but everyone implemented it. It was not even remotely drafted. I mean, all he did was say it, but he gave the illusion that it was the new federal law, and everybody adopted it. I mean, literally, I'm like, what is going on? I mean, there's just no capacity for critical thought. The whole thing, it was one giant illusion after the next. Like they were literally reporting on they were reporting deaths the same day. Okay, like anybody who works anywhere near places where there's the death certificate filled out can tell you that these things take weeks. They literally take weeks to process. That, I mean, like, this is common sense, but if you got everyone scared, then common sense goes out the window, and that's what they do so well.
Yeah, they intimidated people into doing that, making them believe it's law when it's not. And that's
Mhm.
one thing. And then there's a quote by Mark Passio that I like, and it says, "It's not the ruling elite that keep the system in slavery in place. It's order followers, right?
Yeah,
So people just say, "Oh, I got to order follow. I got to keep this," and then you attach order following with fear, with self righteousness, right?
that's
Oh,
right.
I'm the good guy. You know
The
what I mean?
virtue
I'm the
signaling.
hero here. I'm the virtuous one, and it's just a very
Yeah, then they
enticing
accuse you of
piece
killing
of,
people. I'm like, what the fuck are you
yeah, it's
talking
very
about?
enticing to be over there, right? What better to be a hero to have to do nothing to, and then you get the power to oppress other people and tell
That's
people
right.
what to do. So you've got all these very low opportunity
Yep.
things to grasp onto. And when people don't have a lot, they're not contributing in the world. They don't know who they are. They don't know how to, right? Because even if
Yeah,
you're kind of on
it's
the
true.
fence, you don't want to stand up to the other side where, why would
No,
I even want to go to the other side where people are going to call me a murderer and an idiot and a conspiracy theorist and all this and just get my ass handed to me? That doesn't sound like any fun.
no,
So that'll tip you back over, right? So it takes a strong character to see what's going on, to have accountability, to do the research, to be open-minded and hear people out. Because when you do that, and this is what I did the entire time, the truth is self-evident.
that's right. It really is.
When you're listening to everyone's like, you know what, okay, I'll keep going. Well, that's, you're giving me no sound basis. What's your argument? What's your
Right.
reasoning for this? And then you find out when you have that conversation, there is no reason.
No.
Right? It's like, well, we need to now give the V to kids. Well, let's look at their survival rate,
Oh
99.9999.
yeah, that's
It's
right.
like,
It's
and
better
like,
without it.
yeah, what about that test? How does that test work? No one person that told me what to do and I got in an argument with knows how the PCR test worked, who
No,
invented it, or what he said about it. Every other person who knows what's going on know exactly who invented it, what he
that's
said, and
right.
how it works. You know, so
It's
that's
amazing,
accountability
right?
for
And those are the
information.
people who are saying, "Oh, where'd you get your degree?
Yeah,
Google." I'm like,
yeah,
dude,
exactly.
save it, man. Just, like you've been conditioned to like encourage ignorance. This is the point where you're at, and you don't even know, you're not even conscious enough to realize that. Now you are shaming people for looking up information and attempting to decipher truth because you want them to be told the truth just as you have. And you've been conditioned into shaming people for it. How far have we fallen as these incredible, intelligent, sentient beings? I mean, I know that we are on the cusp of something. And I know that it's happening because, everything they did in 2020 was such a overreach. It was so flagrant. I mean, some of us have been on to the V scene for years, and you used to be able to have a conversation with people. Now, there's a lot more people in our camp thanks to what they've done, but the conversation has become, you can't even have it. I mean, people get frothing at the mouth, and it's starting to die down a little bit now, but I'm sure they're going to unveil monkeypox next, and then fucking monkeypox. They should have thought of a better name for this one, because who the hell is going to take it seriously?
Oh, man, yeah, the same group of people. It's just
Exactly.
you don't want
Exactly.
to work, and it's just gonna be like, oh, I was just talking to my wife about that today, and I was like, okay, it's like, because she was kind of awake, but she just was like, I say, like, she just thinks everything's good and
Yeah.
can't imagine the evil stuff, and I've been telling her kind of for years. And I was like, look, Bill Gates,
Yeah.
is saying monkeypox, right? It's like, this is how friggin' obvious it is. You want to
Yeah.
shake? It's not even hard. It's the most obvious thing. It's
It
like those who
becomes
have
so
eyes
obvious,
see. Yeah. So I think it's a spiritual
It
um
is.
life. It's a spiritual experience, and maybe this whole entire thing is so that we can learn to make the choice between good and evil and have our soul weight. Even in, the Bible talks about it. Every spiritual text talks about it. In Egypt, they have the idea of weighing your heart, right? And so
Mhm.
it's giving that, like, they can poison your food, and they can poison your mind, and they do, but you have to poison your soul through your choices.
That's right.
right? And so this is because it's serious and it can be frightening, and it's pushing us towards faith, towards community, toward the person that we want to become during this.
Yeah.
And it's becoming very real. And so if we know that we're infinite, that we don't die, and the most important thing is to protect our soul, then we can operate in this realm with a little bit more power, seeking God, seeking spirit, seeking the right thing to do no matter what. And that makes a very beautiful and honorable
Hmm.
person of high integrity and high character, because death is certain for everybody. But I'd
Right.
rather die with integrity than live a coward, or to
Absolutely.
oppress people. And so when we kind of like bring it all the way down, it's like, hey, okay, be aware of what's going on, then operate in that solution. And then maybe we don't know how it's going to work out, but it's for sure there's going to be a solution. At
Yeah,
worst case, you die, but you could die tomorrow for any other
that's
thing.
right.
And so
And the
maybe you're
truth is, you
here.
can't actually die. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
this physical technology we got, which is incredible and fun, it can expire, but you can't die, as a being, that part of you is never going anywhere. I mean, so we got that going for us. And when you realize that, fear starts to fade. And when you don't have fear as a prism to look through, decisions become a little easier that were once like, oh my God, like if I do that, if I say that, even though I think that, what's going to happen to me, and dude, 2020 for me was the greatest gift, because I'm sitting here. I look back on who I was and I'm like, oh my God, my vision board was just a fucking disaster. I mean, it wasn't a disaster. It had its own nobility, but I look at that guy and I'm like, my God, like, was I really living thinking that this is a replica, but I used to practice holding it, that this was going to make me feel like I got there. Like this is a piece of, metal. This isn't even metal. This is fake metal, but you know what I'm saying? It's all superficial, I have no desire to fake it anymore. And I look at that industry and I'm like, I'm kind of embarrassed I was a part of it, but it was what I was doing. And, when you get wrapped up in what you're doing as part of your identity, you tend to get confused, and then exterior forces are what create the validity that you need to feel like you're accomplishing something. And that is bullshit. You're accomplishing something just being here as a human being. That is everything for you to realize, and when you realize that, self-love and self-esteem come naturally, right? And that's the big shift. So for me, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to an awesome guy like you if not for the events of 2020. So thank you, Gates.
Well, yeah, I love that. Well, I had another really good buddy that, woke up like hard in 2020, and he's like, man, I would have never, I'm a totally new person now. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the wonderful things that's happened. It's woken a lot of people up, and it's going to keep shaking
Mhm.
everybody up so they can make that choice, right? Are they going to still go after materialism? In the Bible, it'll say you can't worship mammon and God, so you can't
Yeah.
worship money and materialism. But it says it in all religious texts. And what was fascinating about the Law Summit is many of them said that the contract. They said everything here is contractual.
Yeah.
Right. If they're going to get you in courts, it's contractual. And there were many speakers that suggested, they said the 1611 King James Bible is the contract on the
Wow.
planet. Not saying other religions or nothing, whatever. They're just saying when you go into court, you bring in the 1611 King James Bible, you know
Wow.
how to read it and present it. That's what's going to allow you to get off, or to navigate that film, because they have to use that Bible.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was so fascinating. And so a lot of these guests could recite it front and back. And then one of my guests, Cal Washington, said, everybody has an opinion on the Bible, but no one's read it. And I was like, that is fascinating, because I remember reading it here and there as a kid, but not as an adult. So of all the spiritual books, I never read the Bible as an adult. And so now I'm going through it and I see how it's law-based, right? And there's a
Wow.
whole, I think it's a book of Job. And I think this is where he's talking to Satan. And Satan says, I've been walking the ends of the earth to and fro or something. And Cal goes, sounds a lot like prison. When I was in there, he was trapped in the ends of the earth. He can't leave. He was in this container. And so it also talks about him having to be loose to season. So all this to manipulate and all this kind of stuff,
Mm.
but then has to go back. So when I'm reading that book now, from just this this space of good versus evil, and how it says, this world is, controlled by evil. And that's something I never understood as a kid. I didn't understand we had war and starvation. I don't
Yeah.
understand why we have human trafficking and that's such a thing. What the frig is going on?
Right.
Why aren't we in a peaceful world? And so it's just a very fascinating book to see all the correlations of understanding evil and good, and where we place in that. And I feel like the only thing that we can do is master ourselves and honor our own decisions, because
Yeah.
it's going to be our soul that's judged, whether it's ourself, whether it's something outside of us, whether it's Jesus, whether it's whatever the case is. I feel like you're going to see your life, and there's no way you can hide it, right?
Right.
It's like when you're a kid and you do something wrong, you feel terrible. You're right. You're going to see your whole life. And when you
Right.
listen to people have near death experiences, they say that they had a life review and they had to feel everything and go
That's
through
right.
everything. And so it does seem like this is a spiritual battle between good and evil. And I feel like we'll get the answer about why it was so hard and so challenging and so stressful on the other side. But I feel like it will be necessary, because it's kind of like, I don't know, martial arts. If you're going to go to war with like a Navy SEAL, you want somebody who's paid the dues and gone through all that terrible
Right.
training, right? You don't
Right.
want a cream puff off the couch.
That's right.
It's like, it's like, okay, you've passed that test. You
That's
were
right.
able to go through that rigor. Maybe that's what this is a spiritual
Well,
training or a
that's how
spiritual
diamonds are
experience.
formed, right? You know,
Yeah.
that's that you see. I watched MMA and boxing probably a little too religiously, and I mean, you see people who have put the time in, and they'll tell you it's not easy. There's a lot of hardship. There's a lot of overcoming yourself. In fact, you're constantly overcoming yourself. But when these feats that they are able to perform because of their dedication are incredible, and I got to think that there's a metaphor in there somewhere for humanity. And what's happening right now, is very much what needs to happen if this iteration, this is my opinion obviously, but if this iteration of humanity is going to make it pass and attempt to recoup and recover from the incredible amount of challenges we have set up for ourselves, both for our wonderful planet and for ourselves as a species, then a lot of things have to collapse. And when you're making an omelet, you got to break some eggs. It's as simple as that. And so I think that what's happening now is, we're going to keep ascending, and they're going to continue to fall off. It's like the tuning fork. When you get two things that are vibrating and they're totally out of alignment, one of them is going to fall away, or the other one's going to start to vibrate with it. So that's what's happening. I think these systems, which are complete and utter failures, are starting to become obvious. And so the powers that be are desperate to hang on and keep their relevance. The corporations. This is going to be a time in history. I think, we're going to look back on it in 1,000 years, when the corporations ruled, when they had control of the planet and it almost was destroyed. God willing, that's the timeline we end up in. I think that we have a window where we have to come together and take back our quote governments so we can do away with them because we don't need them. But you know what I'm saying? Right now, the governments are basically captured entities, and so they're operating not for people, but for profit. And they're doing terribly at it. They're all in debt. They've all been hoodwinked by the same ruling families, the same class. And so when you're talking about good versus evil, I hear you, but I also have to remember that, on another level, we're all playing our roles. On another level, we've all agreed to this, in my opinion, obviously, to be the good guy, to be the bad guy, for the greater evolution of this young species, this young group of souls on this planet. And I'm trying to remain optimistic that we will we'll get it together in time to turn it around. It's not easy.
Yeah, man, I agree. Well, it is a very challenging time, and I think it is going to be, ideally it's collective, right? And I feel like for myself, I always want to figure out, how do we create world peace? How do we solve these massive problems? And the more I've looked into it, the more it's just mastering yourself and being that
Yeah.
solution. And the bigger picture is up to God, the creator. I kind of was worried the other day, they got food shortage and inflation and the whole thing. And I was like, no amount to worry will change the will of God on the big picture.
Yeah.
Right. But but again, it's going to come back to that individual nature and where you're going to resonate, because some people might experience harm and challenge, and you might not. But if you can navigate your challenges, your experiences in a honest way and in a congruent way, and seeking, God or
Yeah.
creator or, life or harmony, you're going to find some sort of solution that I feel like you're going to be led to a very beautiful
Yes.
experience. And maybe this is like when you said the example of cutting the eggs, I was thinking about cymatics. You know how
Yeah.
when they
Oh yeah.
vibrate certain sound, right? So you got that sand there. Well, eventually that disharmony and everything being shaken up comes into a harmonic
That's right.
sphere, and then you're going to find your little spot. So it might be a little bit worrisome at that time. We're trying to shake in the rest of
That's
everybody
right.
else.
And
It's like,
until it takes until it becomes coherent,
yeah,
and when you look at a cymatic, especially if it's in between, when that frequency is being raised, you see it becomes dissonant for a moment. It has to, before it becomes coherent again. And then it takes that beautiful geometrical shape.
and so
And in
maybe why
fact,
it's so hard, the shaking so hard, so the rest of the people start to navigate. It was
yes,
like, I can't participate in this, and we're like, we're waiting, like, come over here, and I'll
that's
just
right.
shift over. I hope, because sometimes they want you to be afraid, they want you to be hopeless.
Yep.
That's the
I
goal.
know.
Fear is the mind killer, right? So if you can just move that towards faith, and it's decision making based on love or fear, right?
That's right.
Based on faith or fear, is like, no matter what, I'll be taken care of.
That's
And
right.
you're right. I'm going to make decisions based on honor, based on integrity, and based on faith. And I might lose some material. Like I lost a lot in doing this. That's what when you reached out, is like, oh man, look at how many subscribers you have doing
Oh
it in
yeah.
a short time. Everything got deleted.
Yeah.
Everything got this. I've been getting shadow banned for 3 years now, but then it went actually full deletion, Patreon, everything, to stay in my integrity. But at least I didn't again sell my soul,
Yeah.
and not do what I could to hopefully share information that can empower people. Although it was serious, because my one friend, he has this ideology where, like, he's like, well, don't focus on the negative because it doesn't really serve you. But, he made a decision that he can be potentially harmed from, because he
Yeah.
doesn't want to look at what it is. And I was like, it's got to be both worlds.
Yeah.
When you go camping and it's in bear country, you might want to bring some mace, or,
Right.
or a rain jacket. It's just, yes, it exists. You don't stay in the fear, but you honor that, whatever that
Yeah.
contrast or threat is, and then prepare for it, and then move about your day in faith.
No, there's a difference, dude. And what you did was, first of all, I was following you throughout it, and I didn't even know who you were until I started to put two and two together. And I was going through. We have a mutual acquaintance in Dr. Edith Chan,
All right.
and I was going through some of her old podcasts, and you kept turning up, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's the guy. Because I was following you, and then I saw you got kicked off. And so, listen, to everyone's listening, when you are shadow banned and you have an algorithmic suppression going on, which sucks. All right. I've been there, and not on this channel, but on other social media sites, and it's terrible. Like you go from having this reach and this audience to not having, even 10% of it. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're enjoying hearing Matt speak as I am, go over and check out his podcast and subscribe to it, because the way to overcome algorithmic suppression is by informing the algorithm that this is going to be bigger anyway. And so then the algorithms start to change because the person starts to receive enough attention. And that's how these algorithms are set up. So definitely do that. I know you don't have much time, Matt, but I'm going to hit you with just maybe one or two more questions. All right. What was the most, maybe there's more than one, but you tell me. I just can't imagine 500 plus podcasts, but is there like one or two podcasts that you remember that have been like the most mind blowing for you?
Well, there's a lot. Yeah. Well, the top of mind ones is my first one with David Lombert, Native American elder. I think it's episode 53, and he said like some of the wildest stuff I've ever heard. So any of the Native Americans I had on, with Clifford Bahudi, unfortunately he's passed, and Carlos Barrios, unfortunately he's passed as well. But those were always very fascinating. Thomas Campbell on simulation theory is very, very fascinating.
Cool.
Cal Washington on law, I really like. And so yeah, there's a couple on, I can't remember, William Buellman is talked about astral projection, which was interesting.
Oh,
And so
cool.
like I love going to the edges and seeing what I can
Yeah.
apply, right? And see these things. And so yeah, those ones are the ones that stick out. And they kind of run the gambit, right? You got the more peak performance, wellness, fitness. I
Hmm.
had a couple guys on recently. One guy squatted 1,000 pounds for reps and deadlifted 1,000 pounds. So a
Jesus.
couple of the strongest people that have ever existed came on the show
Cool.
recently and came on. And so, yeah, they're
Oh
it's a
yeah. I mean,
diverse
like
array.
if you go to Matt's YouTube channel, and you'll be able to do that through the video description here, but you'll see that I mean, there's a couple of different categories, and a lot of them are, he's had people on who even in my small little library of 60 podcasts or so, who I've had on, and that's how I found Matt. But you see that there's a lot of what do you call it? Overage,
Overlap.
overlap. Yeah, between the subjects that he likes to delve into and the things that I like as well. So, if I know for me, I'm playing catch up with this immense library, and I'm enjoying everything I'm coming across. So I encourage everyone who's listening, subscribe to this channel if you're just listening and you haven't done that yet, and also go over to Matt's and subscribe to Matt's.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate that. And one thing you just said there that kind of reminded me, your library is 60, right? And I just had Travis Corcoran on, and he gave a couple examples that I liked. He goes, the elites or whatever wouldn't be crushing so much propaganda if they had it in the bag. They wouldn't need to. So they're throwing the kitchen sink at us. And he goes, it's like holding a ball underwater, and they're trying, but eventually that thing's going to explode through the top. But then he also said, talking about like brick by brick, we're going to do this. And so for you in the last 2 years, taking this opportunity to do your show, which has already gotten to like, a lot of subscribers, which is fantastic, similar subjects. If you're interviewing people that I've had on my show, then we're obviously aligned in that way. You're putting your brick in the wall.
Yeah.
And whether it's just to be a good parent, whether it's just to be a good community member, whether it is just to be an employee with integrity and start to, have accountability in your life and to grow and wherever you are,
Mhm.
that counts, for this shift that's necessary. It's this inner world first and then the outer world. And so if we can just get rid of fear and just play our part and move towards, a life that has value from our own perspective, who you
Yeah.
truly are. Because when you know who you are, you know what your values are, you know what's most important to you, you start to align that and live congruently, you're going to be a person who resonates with peace, with
Hmm.
honor, with dignity, with these high quality characteristics. But when you're just, a slave to the machine doing whatever you can to make more money because you're afraid, or
That's
you
it.
just want this um
Yeah.
posterity or whatever the word is for it, you know what I mean, this look at me type of stuff, then you're
You're
going to be
stuck.
misled very very easily. So that little piece, just your little piece, is so important, and I just appreciate you for
Oh,
doing
thank
that,
you.
because that's what's necessary, the participation. David Lombard used to say that to me all the time. He's like, to create peace, we need participation. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's the best thing that's happened to me, to kind of free myself from that. I love this. I love bringing people on like you, talking to you, and being a part of this awakening that's happening is a great honor to me. And I've been on this path for, over 10 years, and this is just more of the culmination of it. And I look at guys like you who have been doing this, and you guys are like OGs in the game. And so just for you to cut some time out for me with everything I got going on, I'm grateful to sit and talk with you, and I get wiser as I listen to what you have brought to, 100 million minutes listened to. That's a world changing thing. I don't think you should take it lightly. It's amazing that you've done that. That's a lot of minutes and a lot of ears listening to you talk to these people who are bringing incredible information to the masses. So that's very cool, man. I have a question I love asking my guests, and it's a pretty simple one, but I talk a lot about programming and all this stuff, and we know human beings are very capable of being programmed one way or the other. And I love giving my guests the opportunity to share with me what they would, if they could, program. Let's say everybody went to sleep and you could write a line or two of code. What code would you give to humanity that would allow them, a greater expression of this awesome sentience that we have, allow them for greater joy?
That's a really great question. I wrote a book called Zen Athlete, which has self-hypnosis in there. And I've done a lot of guided meditations and affirmations, and I've worked with Dr. Joe as well. So all that kind of stuff. So, you do the sleep affirmations and things like that. So I think that's an incredibly valuable question. Right now, if I were writing the code for most people, because it depends, but, I would say seek God first, in everything you do. Because I don't think a lot of people are. I think that's how they're getting manipulated. And if this is a spiritual existence, it's going to be special. It's going to be meaningful, and what you do matters. If this is, atheistic, there is no creator, nothing matters, it's just material, then, you can go do things and rationalize why you're doing evil, harmful things. So when people are seeking, God, creator, whatever that is for them, I feel like that's the most important thing. And then beyond that, I think it's just the worth of a person, like to find that worth within yourself, to know that the fact that you're created, you're worthy. And my Native American teachers would say that, their life purpose and things are like life purpose. Like you just, is to be alive. They had a different culture, right? It's just like, it's to experience life. Right. But they were naturally honorable within their communities.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they had codes of conduct, and it was actually a matriarchy and I don't know about all tribes, but at least the ones that I was learning from was a matriarchy. So the grandmothers would make the decisions about war or something like that, if that was happening. And so just a different way of life. They would have words for all the different, just a very in-depth language. So different snow had different words, and just a more reverent way of living. Oh yeah, like, and that's what there's a couple things they talk about. All my relations, which is not just human to human, it's all animals, it's plant, it's all the kingdoms. So they pray for all their relations, and they talk about 7 generational thinking, right? And so in writing the code, I feel like it has to be, the person has to have an authentic seeking of God or creator, an authentic way of being where they want to contribute to this planet and to know themselves, because we are in this grand illusion where we don't know much of much. So it's an honest seeking to know who we are, to know that you're good enough as you are, and just seek that guidance, show me who I am, like allow me to have the courage and faith to just participate day by day. And that for me now, when you ask, like, what was I doing now? I was like, the thing I'm inspired to do right now is just get as strong as possible. And I've never lifted really weights in my life. And, I did it here and there, but whatever reason, that's like the energy is going there. So I'm just following that, but I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm doing things that people think, my friends like, holy, like you're lifting that. I was like, yeah, but it took me a while. And it's just because I got inspired to do it, but I follow these inklings of this prayer. Like I'll say, God, show me a way to be of the highest service. Before a lot of the podcasts, I'd say, let this be for the highest service of all. So how can I serve others? By being the best version of myself.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're the best eagle, you're the best eagle in your neighborhood, and you're going to be helping the whole environment. But I feel like the reason why people are so lost is because they're beavers pretending to be ducks. Ducks are pretending to be gooses.
My God, yes.
Gooses are pretending to be, llamas. And so when you know who you truly are, and you say, I want this guidance, I'm going to listen to my inner world. I'm going to know my values, what's most important to me. I'm going to honor life. I'm going to look for signs that everything matters, everything, all my relationships, all my conversations, how can I better myself? But being okay in being incomplete, right? Because we're never fully complete.
No.
So that's like probably the longest way to ever ask your question. But
no. But you got around, and you said something I think really pure gold. You said that the biggest reason why people are lost is because they are, they're beagles pretending to be, rabbits. I'm just totally destroyed. You're beautiful, but you know what I'm saying?
That's perfect. The more opposite, the better.
Yeah. And I think that you're absolutely right on with that. There's really something to that, and in order to shift that, you got to really come into honesty with yourself, and also have enough faith and understanding that the greater alignment you have with this right here, which should be the biggest part of your brain, this heart right here, the more the universe is going to provide for you. And that is my experience. And I know that's hard for people who have always been, I have to see it to believe it. It's hard to make this leap of faith that you need to, but I'm telling you, if you do, when you take that step out, it's going to be like that Indiana Jones movie, I think it was, when, you're going to find solid ground, even if there doesn't appear to be any. And so what you said was right on, man. It's perfect.
Yeah, and it's a worldview shift, right? Most people are thinking about what I can get, right? And I feel like if you shift, it's like, what can I give? Who am I truly? Because when you're that person, the beaver in the forest, he's gonna be miserable pretending to be a duck, but when he's a beaver, he's gonna be stoked on doing beaver things. He might make less money at first, right? But he's gonna grow in integrity. So if your option is money, you're gonna be misled and misguided and manipulated your whole entire life, and you're not going to be fulfilled. And when you're on your deathbed, if you study that, what people regret, you're going to know that you're going to have major regrets. If you know you're going to be taken care of, that you're going to have enough, and then build those brick by brick into something valuable, that you might have great abundance. I'd rather have less in integrity than more out of integrity.
Right.
And I've seen this with my friends and people I know that are wealthy and everything in between. The more people can live in integrity, the more they have happiness and fulfillment.
Yep.
And right, by their own definition.
And abundance comes with those things. Let me tell you, like, period. When you're living in that integrity, and you're finding joy in what you're doing, you're going to generate more of that, and that's going to come in all kinds of forms. Things are going to work out. So I know exactly.
And abundance isn't just money. It's time. It's relationships. It's your
freedom.
Family. Yeah, it's freedom,
Health.
right? So you could make, okay, like Matt, you're gonna make $200 million a year, but you got to work 20 hours a day, never see your daughter in your middle of New York City. Or you can make $35,000, but you can be in the mountains and you can snowboard and you can teach martial arts. If that's hard for you, to understand why, I would never even consider the money. It's like, you got to do some soul searching. What is most important to you? What do you want to do all the time? What do you want to master? Do that. For Alan Watts just said it very simply. He said, when people would ask, what do I want to do with my life? He would say, what would you do if money were no object? Right. Go do that. And let the money sort itself out. Because if you do it inversely, you're going to be misled. Now we have responsibilities and things we need to be accountable for. Right. You can figure those out, but you're not putting a Ferrari in the driveway doing this first. You're thinking about like the quality of life. Like, I wouldn't trade my years in Whistler where I was snowboarding 150 days a year and just enjoying the absolute crap out of the quality of life that I was created while researching all these things. Right. And then eventually it went into the next thing and the next thing. But that was me honoring the inner voice. Right. And from doing that, the Indiana Jones reference, we're stepping off, and you don't see, I've seen that where spirit, God, creator has literally just appeared, and it saved me from all of my decisions are illogical. Yeah. Almost everything I've done is it doesn't make any sense because it's not certain, right, and it could potentially harm me, and there's no financial reward. Right. I'm not doing it for that. Right. I studied with a Native American elder for almost a year or 2 years, but I was in Maine traveling around the States with basically no money for a year. Because I wanted to learn that, and it was invaluable, and somehow it worked out, and I have no idea how it did.
Yeah. No, that's why people like us get called crazy because we're not listening to anyone else, but dude, I know you got to run, Matt. It's been awesome, dude. I'm sure that we're going to get a chance to talk again eventually. So, but I appreciate your time so much, man. I wish you luck, in with your family and move and everything that's going on up there north of us. And it's been real, bro.
Well, I very much appreciate the insight, and I'm grateful for everything you're doing. So you're doing phenomenal work too. And, for everyone listening, one thing I like to say is to do 3 kind acts a day, go out of your way and to do it. And don't tell anyone. That one came from one of my native teachers, David Lombear, which I think is amazing. But yeah, man, it's the process of just believing in yourself and getting clear and just letting go, let go of the material. Don't let that be it is important and we need it, but focus on who you are, growing in your character. The richest friend that I have is worth lots of millions. And he goes, you could take everything from me and I'll rebuild it again.
Yep.
You can start me on
Absolutely.
zero on the streets. He's like, and he's dead. And I know he is, because he knows what it takes to be successful.
Yeah.
Right. So he went that balance. So he got the success, but he also balances out his personal life when the work became too much, and his wife had to
Yeah.
talk with him, and then so he goes, okay, I value my family. Let me just pump brakes a little bit on
Absolutely.
this. Right. And so, that guy's navigating in a beautiful way. And so
It's
you got this.
mindset and heart. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But you're the man, and I'll be in touch to let you know when this is coming out, and we'll include all the links to everything in our video description. But it's been real, brother.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Thanks, Matt. Take care, bro.
All right. Peace.
Bye.